The biggest website we ever did was just under $300,000. I think our average retainer was 8K, but so anywhere from like 3 to 12K per month based on what the output was. If it didn't work out, you're motivated to tell me it didn't work out. If it did work out, you're motivated to serve that client well or do whatever you're doing right there. So then don't tell me anything. So we just turned silence into a value for us.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another interview. I'm super blessed to be here with Matt DeSeno. Matt, thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I was excited to sit down with you because we've talked at length, but I realized I don't actually know much of your story. And when I don't know much of someone's story, but I've seen a lot of things about them, I tend to fill in the gaps myself. So I'm excited to see where I'm wrong today. Yeah, maybe we should do another episode where I try to tell the story without actually knowing anything. I think it wouldn't be quite as exciting as you telling it today. So we'll get into it. And then we'll talk about like 2024, what's going on, what you're seeing in the SaaS space, and the unique insight that you have into tons of industries and best practices and things like that. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's do it.
Before we get into today's episode, I'm super excited to share with you a little bit about one of our sponsors on the podcast today, Riverside. If you are a content creator or a podcaster and you're tired of your recordings with guests who sound like they're speaking with you through a tin can, then Riverside is for you. We've all been there. You're ready to do the interview. You've got your questions ready. Your guest is all set to go, and then your internet connection is unstable. Message ruins the entire recording. With Riverside, you can get rid of those internet issues and choppy audio and have clean sounding recordings effortlessly. You see, the interesting thing about Riverside is that they record each part of the episode locally on that person's device, and then they upload it to the cloud, so you make sure not to miss anything, even if it's the other person's fault. But that's not all. Riverside's amazingly user-friendly interface is super easy to use, which allows you to spend less time troubleshooting technical difficulties and editing your podcast, and instead spend more time speaking with amazing guests and getting recognized for your valuable content. It can be used for podcasts, video interviews, video marketing, panel discussions, talking head presentations, and live broadcasting. And not only does it just record all of those things, it has a ton of other built-in features that make it a no-brainer for podcasting and video. Things like AI transcriptions, editing a video by removing text, AI clips, captions, and an awesome short-form video editor built right in. And they even recently came out with a feature that auto-edits the long silences out of your podcast to the perfect length. It really is your all-in-one online video and podcast studio. And if you need more convincing, Gary Vee, Guy Raz, and Ali Abdaal all use Riverside for their content and podcasts. But the very best part is that I've teamed up with them to get you guys 50% off any plan. And to get that discount, all you have to do is click the link below and enter the code IT'sKeaton at checkout. Thanks so much, Riverside, for sponsoring this episode. And with that said, let's get started. If I'm not mistaken, your agency is called BAM. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the agency. BAM.
Was that the first business you ever started?
No, not at all. That was the first LLC that I ever started. So I ran for a while as a sole prop. You can get pretty far, like with not a lot of legitimacy, if that makes sense. So I had a DBA and then a sole proprietorship, and then BAM was when we were like, we need to have an LLC, and so that was.
And what was the DBA? Was it an agency?
Yeah, it's always been freelancer. So it like started off truly just like freelancing, and out of college was really where it started there. This is a great question. No one ever asked me this question. I don't think I've ever publicized this. But so if you want the OG, it's embarrassing. It's like asking what your like AIM is or like was back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh man, we're starting. This is already juicy. So the first, people should do this. They're like, what was your first business name? So embarrassing. It was Shamrock Solutions. That was what I named. I was like, yeah. So
you're going to get lucky.
Yeah.
Get lucky with Matt.
Oh man, it's so bad. So bad. I have some Irish heritage. I have freckles. People can't always tell. I got a lot of freckles. And I grew up and I had like reddish hair. It's kind of auburn grayed with age, really. So I love all things green. So I love
There you
green. I
go.
love shamrocks and clovers and all that sort of stuff. And so that was the first business name.
Yeah, we always had this joke, my friend and I, because I started an LLC in like high school or something. I can't remember the original story. Someone asked me the name of the company, and I was like kind of embarrassed. Similar name, you're like, don't want to say it. And so when I started out, I just didn't want to waste time on the name. So my LLC is Keaton Walker LLC.
It's a
And
good
then
name.
he started his business and like did the same thing. And we just always laughed, like when you're first starting out and someone asks you what your business name is. It's like Keaton Walker LLC.
Can't go wrong. People should
Yeah,
there should
exactly.
be more advice towards that, because you can either you spend too much time deciding on the name, or you're
Yeah.
like me, you spend no time deciding on the name. And turns out the name doesn't really mean much.
Yeah, it's true. There's always a DBA, and you can just buy the domain and just nobody has to know. The bottom of all of ClickFunnels emails says their like real
Edison.
LLC name, and
Yeah.
you're just like, okay. Okay, so you start straight Shamrock Solutions, and you're doing like web development or ads or what?
This is, oh my gosh. So yeah, I was just doing web dev. It was
Okay.
just web dev. And so a little bit like evolved into design and development, because a lot of folks are like, I need a website, but I don't know like anything about it. And so, yeah, the backstory was in 8th grade. For whatever reason, luck, or I forget if there was intention, I took a programming class and I loved it. And it was programming. We were doing like, I think it was Java at the time. And so we were making a video game. And so I made my first thing was a video game I called Bacon or Alive 2. And it was about a pig and you had to escape the butcher. And I made it a sequel because I thought, like, start off with a sequel, it means the first one was already good. So it's a little bit of a marketer mind in there.
There you go.
8th grader, but so I just love to tinker and program. And so then it was like HTML and CSS. And even I think it was my senior year of high school and then into college, I discovered WordPress. And I was like, oh, it's great. And so PHP and building like plugins and that whole space. So that was sort of like the tinkering freelancer mindset. I went to school in Malibu, went to Pepperdine. I did not want to go home. And so I was committed to like getting a job or something. I was like, I'm going to stay around here. No matter what, I'm going to stay around here. And there was one agency in Malibu. And it was very easy for me to reverse engineer and see they charged $10,000 for a website. They actually had a thing. You could go on there and fill out like stuff and they'll be like, this is what we charge. And I was like, I would do it for half that. I would do it for 1/20th of that at the time. And so that was the origin of just sort of freelancing websites.
Okay. And you're only selling to the people in Malibu.
That was it. Yeah. So it was just Malibu. I recently taught I got to speak on lead generation. I was like, it was luck is really what it was. My lead generation strategy was like surf, meet people in the lineup. That was it. Like,
Hey guys, just jumping in here to give you a quick word on our sponsor GoHighLevel before we get back to the interview. If you don't know already, GoHighLevel is the top sales and marketing solution for any business, but particularly agency owners or anybody that needs a software product to resell to their existing customer base. It has everything you need to capture, nurture, and close leads for marketing clients. And the best part is GoHighLevel believes in not taxing the agencies on its platform, so you can get unlimited clients for one low flat monthly fee. The best features include a CRM, funnel, website and email builders, course hosting platform, robust marketing automation builder, a consolidated chat stream with WhatsApp, email, SMS, Instagram DMs, and Facebook DMs, reputation management, social media posting, tracking and analytics, and so much more. And as if that wasn't enough, GoHighLevel is fully white labeled, meaning that you can take the platform and put your own brand on the desktop and mobile app and resell it to your industry for whatever price you want. Essentially, what GoHighLevel has done is brought the bar for starting a software company way lower, so normal people like you and I can help our clients with an amazingly robust software without paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in development costs. I am not kidding when I say hands down, GoHighLevel is my favorite software of all time. It has been integral to my success with my agency. It helped me increase my clients' results and retention, and I use it every single day for my own business. And if you sign up for GoHighLevel today, not only will you get a 30-day free trial, which is not available on their website, but you'll get all of the bonuses listed at itskeaton.com keen.com/mastermind, which gets you support, templates, and courses to kickstart your high level journey and get those first few clients or scale to your next few clients. If you're already a high level customer, you can also get all of those bonuses by upgrading to the next highest plan underneath my link. Instructions for that are also at itskeaton.com/mastermind.
Those were the early days. And so I had a goal. I remember my first year, I was like, I want to make 100K, right? If that was, do 20 websites. And it was funny how not hard it was, actually. It was like, you just don't overthink it. And I wasn't, I think because it was mostly just referral based, and it was like, I put up I don't even know if I did it then, but it was, I found ways to be known, right? But like basic kind of luck driven, like hopefully they find me, hopefully they see me, or they just hear about me. And so I got a couple of contacts in the health and wellness space. Was primarily kind of like, there was a number of big name folks in the health and wellness space that they were living in Malibu, and they maybe had bigger companies or emerging things. And so we just started getting deals in that space. I don't remember where the first connection came from, but got a PR firm in LA, might have been Santa Monica, that's just started sending clients. So then they would do, like, they were PR, but they would do the full design. So they would concept it out and do the whole design and this whole process with the clients and just hand us over like, hey, build this thing. And so then we kind of moved into the Shopify space. So there was a zone where like, do we do WooCommerce? Do we do Shopify? And I kind of thought, I think Shopify's more the future of e-com. And I was right and lucky. And so there was, so then you build a reputation in Shopify. So we did that till 2016, just build and a little bit of design and dev. And I started building a small team, just designers and other developers. To get to the pivotal moments, there was, so I met my wife in 2010. We got married in 2014. We bought our first house in 2015. And basically for the first few years, I was kind of like ignorantly optimistic because things were all going well. It's like all up and to the right. And we bought our first place, and it was like the place, I remember we were shopping, it was like it needed no work. And then we decided to put all the work into it. So we like went to the top of our budget, and then we just like pushed it even more so, and like gutted all this stuff. Of course it wasn't like all the stuff, but we gutted like all the bathrooms, and we redid all the floors. You're like, we didn't do the kitchen. You're like, okay, we did everything else. So there's a lot of expenses. And that in that time, how we bid jobs is people would come to us and we go through this big proposal process, 25-page, 40-page proposals. Here's what you're looking for. Here's how we do it. Here's a breakdown of cost, blah, blah, all this sort of stuff. And because we got into bigger and bigger websites. We did, So like, I think the biggest website we ever did was just under $300,000.
Wow.
For a website. And some people are like, that's crazy. In hindsight, it was crazy. But part of it is you learn, like, you start to charge based on value. It's not based on inputs, it's based on outputs.
Yeah.
But still the process was very much so nice to have. Like we were like yes, that sounds like people either really wanted to have it. And then it was a big, long process. So for whatever reason, in Q4 2015, we started, I got a ton of people saying, yeah, we'll start in January. And I had a cash flow crisis because I had team. I'd outpoured a ton of stuff into like our personal house and finance and stuff like that. And I thought like everything's always been up and to the right. So it's going to keep going up and to the right. And it didn't. And I remember December 2015, there was nothing going on. Nothing should have been bad. It was just bad for us. We couldn't pay our credit card because you're like, when you run a business, you're last in line, and you can't like pay payrolls on credit cards. There's so many other things that like take the cash first before you do. And I remember going to my wife, and it was like the most like embarrassing, it's just immoral. It was just a painful thing. I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm not a type A person, but from the time I've graduated to present day, I keep track of every dime in and out of my life on Google spreadsheets. And I think I thought, like, this is just adulting. This is just fiscal responsibility. And I'm not type A about anything else. And I didn't realize it until actually it was 2019, but that I had a belief, a fear that if I ever ran out of money, I'd become the worst version of my father. And so that fear drove me to like insulate our life with profits. And here I was, and I couldn't do it. And it was like colliding, the provider and business owner. I was like, I felt so demoralized. And so we lived through it. It was like I carried like credit card balances for all of them. I was also like a deadbeat in that kind of way. Like I felt like no debt, no nothing. And January came, bunch of the deals came in, we were fine, but that switched. So I was like, ooh, two things. I was like, I want recurring revenue. I want to be able to forecast what I'm going to make, and I got to learn marketing. I was like, we got to do the thing people want now, not that they want like eventually. And that was the first switch that flipped. So we tried to learn marketing. I don't know. It was like YouTube University. People ask, like, I never actually somehow I didn't find digital marketer. I found, I don't even remember specifically the spaces there, but something led me to like the idea of landing pages. So we started offering like landing pages. We found lead pages, which was okay, but very limited. And I was like, as a sort of development chops, you're like, I want to be able to do whatever I want with it. And I couldn't. So I was like, what's the customizable version of this? And so someone turned me on to ClickFunnels. It was the editable version of lead pages. And so came into ClickFunnels, and it was ClickFunnels Marketing University. That's like, we learned all of our stuff in there. And as we were learning, we were like, I forget, someone was teaching at some point, or I don't remember if I asked someone, and they're like, e-com is really difficult. I would go brick and mortar. They're saying like, hey, if you do some of the stuff that's like it could be a strategy for e-com like 5 years ago, and still like cutting edge right now in like brick and mortar space. And so that was another like shift in clientele. We're like, okay, we got to do local. We got to find just like boring businesses. And so we started doing real marketing, like for ourselves even. We did Thumbtack.
Nice.
For
web design?
Yeah, and this is the early days. So there was like nobody. And I was like, and so there was a point there where we just obliterated in terms of reviews. Because I was just simple little concepts. They're like, if you just get a bunch of reviews, this is like this idea of social proof is like people are going to choose you. And so I was like, okay, we can play this game. So we, drop the prices, do a high volume of just great work, get hundreds of reviews. And now it's like when you bid a job, it was like us, 530 reviews, like second place, 19.
Yeah.
And you're like, just momentum begets momentum. And we did. I came with it. I didn't learn this from anybody else. I really just think I took a little bit of, my dad was in the real estate space, and I understood kind of like lease to own properties. And I was like, what if we do lease to own websites? And really what I did is I said, people didn't love the idea of recurring for forever. And I wanted to actually increase our price for now, like little brick and mortar. Like we had done, like I said, 50, 60, 100, $300,000 websites, but they were like higher end brands and stuff like that. Now for like average day business, they're like, their budget might've been like 2K or whatever. And I was like, how do I get them to pay 10K? So we did lease to own is what we called it. So it was like a 2-year financed option. And after 2 years, you owned it outright. You could take it wherever you wanted. But our methodology was we would just resell you on an update to the website and just keep you paying $6K a year or $5K a year, whatever it was, in as long as we could into perpetuity. And so that's how we structure a lot of our deals. So we'd say like, I was like, it's totally fine with deferred cash flow, because that cash flow then financed the new development, the cash up front. And so just started focusing on MRR.
Nice.
Yeah.
And BAM is still doing pretty much the same thing today?
No, not at all. So sorry if I'm going, this is the long full backstory, but we can speed it up. So 2018, so we were doing this, growing in that space, and we were like, how do we charge even more? And this is, I guess, the big aha is when you have recurring revenue, you can risk a lot more. You just can, right? Because you can grow it to a point where you're financing beyond what you need. So you have a chunk there of like, hey, this is guaranteed and it's guaranteed risk. And so it's always easier to play with that. So learn the concept of performance marketing, which we're like, oh, there are people who are charging, way bigger retainers. Like we're in the space of like $500 retainers. And you're like, people are like, we charge thousands of dollars because we run. Oh, that was like, that was like the ads, or that was the website still deferred. Then like, if you do if you run Facebook ads for people, now you could charge a few $1,000s. So we kind of did that. And then we're like, well, if you charge performance, you can charge even more. And so we got into the space where we were, charging a percentage of what we delivered. And in our playbook to do it all, we needed like, I forget, 7 to 10 different tools, all these things. Like we were having them also was facilitated in this affiliate marketing space of like ClickFunnels. So it's like, they sign up for the ClickFunnels account, they sign up for their active campaign account, they sign up for like their 7 to 10 different things, Skipio account. And so all these things that we were, have them sign up for. One thing that happened was through Shopify, I built up, Shopify accidentally turned me into an affiliate because you would develop, and then when you'd send it over to the client, they just said they're now an affiliate. So I was like, oh, that was the only way I knew how to do it, is like I literally had to build it first and then I would give it to them, and they were like, congrats, thanks for sending us a client. And so we had folks in those days where they were on like the top tier, they'd go straight to the top tier of Shopify because of volume or whatever. I never even fully understood the structure, but we had folks, paying out hundreds of dollars per month to us in commissions. Because they weren't small shops. And so I'd grown up, I'd gotten this like recurring passive commission, affiliate commissions. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. So then the prospect of higher tier marketing, but you could do all these affiliate stuff. I was like, oh, wow, this worked accidentally for Shopify. Let me go and do it for these other ones. So we're growing up, simultaneously increasing retainers. We got to I think our average retainer was 8K. But so anywhere from like, 3 to 12K per month based on what the output was.
And the performance was, these are e-com clients mainly, or info?
No, this is mostly brick and mortar.
Really?
Mostly brick and mortar, and mostly California. So
okay,
it's come into play.
So how are you tracking the performance on the, like, that's always been my issue with performance based offers in the local business space. Like a lot of it, you're relying on the local business owner to, report to you. How did you swing that?
So we created a system of assumptive success.
Okay.
So if I send you someone and you don't tell me they no-showed, I assume that, like, you have 24 hours to tell me they no-show. If you tell me nothing, they showed. And you've got 24 hours to tell me if they didn't buy. Otherwise, I assume they bought. So now you've aligned it. You're like, if they didn't buy, tell me they didn't buy so you don't get charged. If they bought, take your time fulfilling with them. I'm just going to assume they bought anyways. And so that's what we did is assumptive performance KPIs there, which is aligned. And so you have to have a contract, and it's like reasonable. You're like, if it didn't work out, you're motivated to tell me it didn't work out. If it did work out, you're motivated to serve that client well or do whatever you're doing right there. So then don't tell me anything. So we just turned silence into a value for us, and clients felt like that was reasonable. And it was like, ultimately they were driving the majority of the value. We were taking a portion of the value, not all of it.
And these are like, give me a few examples of like the clients you were working with at the time.
This is downside too, is we're generalists in this regional area. So like you had financial services, you had fitness, you had professional services like legal and stuff like that. And so we had a few hundred, but it was chaotic. There was sort of the similar system where it's like, get people to like run ads, get them to show up, and then client sells them. And it was just per the contract. We'd say like, what's a client worth to you? And that was sort of the process there. So they could tell us that they didn't show, and they could tell us when they didn't sell. And if they didn't, we assumed they did. And for the most part, it worked great. It actually, more people can realize it does work well when you set, like, those are reasonable standards where the onus is on them, where you're like, so there were probably times where they were like, that person did actually convert. And we're like, hey, no worries. Next time, be sure to take the time to tell us. That's why this contract is structured in this way. And so because they're still getting the majority of the winning, it's like when you, I don't know, I don't have a great example of like a grown-up scenario. Let's say you don't pay your mortgage 1 month and they're like, yeah, you got to strike on your credit report. And they're like, next time pay your mortgage. Like, we're all adults. We told you this would happen.
Yeah,
and you're like,
exactly.
gosh, this sucks. But you're like, yeah, it's on me. Like I should have done this thing. I didn't do it. And so
for a like financial services, like a financial advisor, you're sending them appointments through Facebook ads.
This was a tricky one. It's funny you bring that one up in particular because they have a certain they're not allowed to pay performance based on clients, but you could do it then based on show. They can absolutely pay per show, not pay per like customer, because they're getting sometimes it's fiduciaries have different regulations there, but it would be like a pay per show model.
So what would you charge for a show?
$100.
$100 and no retainer?
No, we did retainer.
So the retainer be like 2K or
no, we did a 3K retainer, and then we did which we use as like a guarantee. So basically they're guaranteed 30 shows.
I see. And then anything above that, you charge them the 100 per show.
That's correct. Yeah.
Got it. And the ads are just like another 3K on average
in spend.
Yeah.
This is the cool thing. Like, it was to their appetite. So we said, like, so they were covering the ad spend too. So they pay the ad spend, but I was like, of course you pay your ad spend. We dealt with the creative. We were aligned to maximize their ad spend, because if they're like, this is my budget for the month, like, we can get double the amount of shows out of it. It was like better for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they set the budget. We set the minimum, and then we were aligned to grow. Like, they needed to be wanting to grow. And so it was mostly businesses that probably had at least like 10 employees is where, like, that was the zone where it fit well. Because they were growth minded. It was also businesses that probably had recurring value, where it worked well, because the thing about that, like, it might cost, like, let's say their math might work out, cost them $1,000 to acquire a customer, but they actually would have been happy paying 10 grand to acquire a customer.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, this is great. And so we did a lot of great marketing. It was hard work, but like all things worth doing, it's like hard work.
Yeah.
And risk reward, which I didn't know at the time. I was not fully conscious of it. So that went on. So the next shift there was in 2018. Shopify redrew their lines and took away all of my affiliate commissions. So I had this like aha moment of like, well, first I was like, are you kidding me? You can do that?
Yeah.
And you dig into it, you're like, oh yeah, they can do whatever they want. Turns out when you go public and ask all the shareholders, hey, do you want to keep paying Matt for something he sent us in like 2012?
Yeah.
No, we all collectively voted and said, no, we're going to stop paying you. And I was like, oh, dang. It was this weird, it was like the air got knocked out of me. I remember it was just like it was like October. And I was like, oh, woof. And I had been pushing all of these other folks, and it's like affiliate commissions are growing up there. But then I was like, it was like learning, like, the ground is sinking sand. Like, this is, it's all a trap. And oh man, it was such a sucker punch. And, so then I was like, okay, we gotta be one of these softwares. I was like, it's all, I remember, I loved ClickFunnels and like watching what they were doing, but I was like, man, this is so brilliant. But the whole time I was like, Russell, the brilliance of this is, doesn't matter what tier people buy into, they're buying the software. It's the content. You have this invisible foundation to your value ladder that was contained in everything else that you're selling. So you're selling books and education and masterminds and all this sort of things. It's like, and all the while it was driving the foundation. That was the thing that you wanted. So you never even had to market the thing that you wanted. You marketed all the things around it.
Yeah.
Which was kind of what's happening as a service provider. Like, oh, we're always driving. Like, they didn't want a Scipio account.
Mm-hmm.
We just tell them this is what you need. And so at the time I was like, so looking, what can we do? And I thought, well, the easiest thing I think is two-way text. For some reason, there were still software, so they only did one-way SMS. And so Scipio paid arm and a leg to have two-way SMS.
Yeah.
That was it. And we kind of already knew enough, like, hey, Twilio's here. I think there's a way to do this. I think we can build this ourselves. So we started building it, and then I had a friend out of ClickFunnels world who was like, I think what you're building, someone else has already done. And they let you use it for like $300 a month. And this was like December of 2018. And
Nice.
I'm like, oh, what a bummer. But then I was like, this can't be real. So then I check it. So it was like January of 2019. I'm like, this cannot be real. And the site is so sketchy and this seems so fake. And so during the sign up process on the form, it's like, if you have any questions, call this number. And I was like, it's like they like don't want me to buy, right? So I called the number and the person's like, sounds like they're walking somewhere, like, hello? And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Someone who's running a scam has put your phone number on their site. And Sean's like, no, high level. This is Sean. And I was like, okay. So we started talking. It was a cell phone. He just had his cell phone on this ClickFunnels, landing page that was very, very sketchy looking, like just super rudimentary. And so I'm probing, I'm like, so it's $297 a month. That was the biggest plan they had. So $297. I think that was the only plan they had actually in the start. $297 a month and unlimited clients. I'm like, we've got a few hundred clients, like unlimited clients, like no hidden fees. Like, you just connect your Twilio account and you're good. I was like, okay, let's do this thing. And man, the early days, I was like, it was so promising that you just like see past some of the jankiness, but I was like, okay, it did what it said I was going to do. It didn't have custom fields. So like for a contact, I was like, I need like it had name, email, phone number, stuff like that. Might have even had notes, but I was like, I need to be able to define like an offer. And we'd commonly do this where it'd be like, okay, if they're opting in a form, this form was for, $67 first appointment. And I wanted to be able to pop that in from the form. And just so then when we're talking to them, we know we're running the same automation, but there's dynamic variables in there. Like, hey, you asked for our $67 appointment, when can I get you in, kind of a thing, versus you asked for our whatever different promotions we run. And so my first post in the high level group, so I go to him, I was like, can you guys build this? He's like, just put it on we got an idea board, put it on the idea board, get people to vote for it. There's like less than 100 people inside of the Facebook group. And so my first post, I still there. I did, what's the Rosie the Riveter? Like, yes, we can. That was like the image. I was like, this will get people's attention. So bad. I'm a horrible politician. I was like, please vote. Like, this basic idea, custom fields. And it got no traction. No one, like, I wasn't I think high level kind of emerged out of Billie Jean, and a lot of like that world was the early adopters. So I knew no one. And wasn't connected. I didn't even think to like friend request people so that they would see my posts, nothing. So I come back to Sean like a week later. I was like, Sean, I'm a horrible politician. Or maybe I'm a great politician. Can I just pay you? Like, what can I do to get this to happen? And he was like, he says, well, we've got this, we have a special plan. We're $5,000 a month. We'll just build whatever you want. And I was like, done. So that's how we started. And I looked back when at this last, our SaaS Launch Live event, my invoice was number 2. So I was like, I don't know if the first one was a test or if I was actually the second person to buy it, or if he was just like, just taking money to like get money however he could. And so we started, that was, that's how we started into high level. Oops.
Good.
Let me,
okay. So you roll that out to everyone. What's the birth of HL Pro Tools?
So we launched our own SaaS. We made a separate name, made up a nonsense name, ran it through ClickFunnels. I don't know if you can see it back here, but got my first 2 Comma Club award. I'd been in ClickFunnels for how many years, but I was like, we don't sell anything through a funnel. The first thing I could sell through a funnel was high level. I was like, this is going to be great. Now, to be fair, it's a little bit cheating because I just told all of our clients, like, stop paying for A, start paying for B. That was it.
You got the 2 Comma Club award
selling
for high level.
For high level. Selling high level. And they didn't have a funnel builder, right? The early days, all it had was a CR. It didn't feel like I was choosing teams. It was like, no, I was I
Yeah.
loved ClickFunnels, and I had
Mhm.
this secret called GoHighLevel, which was this
Yeah.
magical software. And so now I was like, I don't have to do what Russell says. I can do what Russell does. I'm just gonna like
Mhm.
run the exact playbook. I was like, if it works for ClickFunnels, it probably works for me over here with my texting software.
Yeah.
And so that was it. It was like I didn't have a lot of features. Didn't just focus on that, and it was. I mean, back in the days, people won't know, but they split. They didn't have workflows. They had triggers and campaigns. Was how
Mhm.
they kind of balanced
Yeah.
things. So anywho, we did triggers and
It's so
campaigns.
funny to hear it called a texting software.
That was it.
Because
It was
it's so
like
much more now, but you're right. That
it
was
was a
the
rudimentary CRM
yeah.
that could do two-way text messaging. In 2019, that was still like cutting edge two-way
Mhm.
text. You like no one had it. You got it like, or they charged crazy amounts for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we even had clients connect their own Twilio. So we said sign up for Twilio and you can use the so we had them sign up for their Twilio accounts. We didn't even carry the texting costs. They had their own Twilio account on the software. $297. Actually, we launched for $197 a month was our price point there, and it was great. It was magical, and so did that. I remember in November of 2019, I was in a mastermind. I was in Julie's mastermind, actually. Julie now Chanel.
Yeah.
And there was like maybe 40 people there, and I'm kind of sharing what I'm doing, and people were like, you should teach agencies what you're doing. And I was like, I don't want to share my secrets. I literally said that. I was like, I'm not telling anybody. This is mine, oh mine. It was so funny, but like I was saying, here's what we're doing. This is great because we now used it to supplement basically profitability. So there was
Yeah.
services always like profits go out the just leave because of
Yeah.
team, and there's so much volatility there. So we were
Mhm.
still scaling the performance marketing, but I was able to like throw on a huge chunk of profits by making one ingredient in our performance marketing, this low ticket thing. So then, because sometimes the marketing, as people learn, if you're good, if you're bad, you definitely get fired. If you're good, sometimes you also get fired, right? They're like, hey, we're good. We can't grow anymore. And you're like, well, isn't that a great graduation present? No
Yeah.
more retainer. Like,
Yeah.
pat on the back to me. I got you to capacity and now I get nothing. But they would keep the software.
Yeah.
And so that's where we found we're like, this is so even if we were coming in and we just pump them full of people for 3 or 4 months because that was all they could even handle, and be like, hey, I'm good. But they would always keep the software. So we intentionally had a separate brand. We never said it was us. It was a separate name, a separate brand, separate entity, separate stripe, all that sort of stuff, because then that magic would happen. So we were just spun up a separate business that our agency referred folks into, just like we're still referring them to ManyChat and ClickFunnels, all those other things. And so COVID hits. I guess the other important thing was my wife got pregnant, expecting our first in 2020. So 2019, she got pregnant. And as I alluded to, I have this high pressure to be an amazing dad. And so I was like, I need disconnected revenue is what I called it. So I was like, I need more disconnected revenue because the agency stuff was good, but it was connected. If a client has a bad day, my day is ruined. If someone's paying you 10, 12K a month, it's crazy how much you can kind of like handle, but it all feeds up to you. All the bad stuff feeds up to you and your days get derailed.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I need disconnected revenue is what I called it. I needed money that was coming in disconnected from my time. So even if people had a bad day, my day wasn't ruined. And so I need to be present and focused on doing this thing. And so that was the catalyst too for doing the SaaS stuff. And so 2020 comes around and a couple things converge. My wife goes into labor 7 weeks early. This is our first kid. We are ignorant and stupid. I don't have a crib. Our thought was she was still working. So she was working. She's a registered dietitian, works in like dialysis and renal dietitian stuff. She was going to work until 36 weeks.
Yeah.
And then just like take off the first 4 weeks before labor or as the projected labor date.
Yeah.
We got nothing. Don't have a car seat. Don't have we were like, oh yeah, like we'll wait till that month before and then we'll prepare for the baby. Clueless. Her water breaks. And we're like, this can't be this doesn't happen. What's going on here? It's March 15th. And so my Instagram is filled with laughing at people making a run on like toilet paper in like Target, and then we're in the hospital.
Wow.
And this is all happening. So they try to delay the actual birth because his lungs weren't developed. So they're doing all this stuff and trying to sustain it. He's born. The hospital doesn't know, like, if people recall, that week was shut down, lockdown.
Yeah, yeah.
And they didn't know what to do. So they started kicking people out of the hospital, and they started converting. It was just craziness. They had no idea what to do. And so he's born, he can't breathe on his own. So he's taken to the NICU. They just lock the NICU away and then kick us out of the hospital.
Wow.
And so for me, who is all of my professional goal was just to create enough of a moat so that I could somehow be a great dad. And I was kicked out of the hospital. I was not emotionally prepared to leave without my son. Like I wasn't. So this like trauma that happens in this moment, I resolved. I'm like, the first night I had to go away, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I don't like this. I don't like being away from him. And so I resolved I would go to the hospital with my backpack, a lunchbox, and a car seat, because I knew that when we were going to pick him up, that you bring a car seat.
Yeah.
And I just broke into the hospital through the ER. I literally even was like, okay, I'm going to go at like shift change. So I planned to do it when the guard would like be right before, like they're like sleepy, like overnight shift was going to go there.
Yeah.
And so, because they closed down the hospital, so you could enter through the ER. So I'd enter the ER, say, my son's in the NICU, just say the fact. They didn't know protocol, and they're like, oh, yeah, he's in there, go ahead. But they won't let you into the NICU. So it's like, I couldn't actually get into the NICU. I could just get close. And so I picked out a waiting room, and I would just work just to be within, I don't know, probably 100 feet of it. Probably was the closest waiting room, but still, it's like, I have no perception of feet and time and space. And that's where I took client calls and team calls and just faced COVID shutdown. We were in California. I am still in California. California, look back and you're like, I guess the right word, overreacted crazily. Like, we had California's like looking at New York thinking that was about to happen to them. And so shutdowns, it's just insanity. And so of course, clients who were like, I can't have people visit. Like, what's the point in marketing? Nobody can come. But we also did something dumb, is we had net 30 and net 60 deals with clients. And accounts payable turns out as a super liability in like a disaster event. So we got stiffed for tens of thousands of dollars from people. Just like, hey, sorry, I can't pay. And I'm like, but this is based on work we did 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So in the crisis, one of my mantras was like, money doesn't disappear, it just shifts. And so I looked at, what did we have? And we had even in the disaster, clients they didn't know, they were stiffing us for like tens of thousands of dollars, and they kept on paying their silly SaaS subscription because they didn't want to lose the CRM, right? Like, and it just like killed me. Like, I see you paying over here. I so desperately wanted to just be like, charging that credit card and like, come at me, bro. Tried to stiff me. But I realized, I was like, okay, if I had built everything on low ticket retainer SaaS, I'd be so much stabler here. And, but we also looked at like, what do we had? We had a team, we had folks focused, like, and there was a ton of underutilization, especially when retainers started going away. And I realized, okay, money doesn't disappear, it just shifts. There's other people in other industries that were doing the same thing as us, and we can deliver value in those areas through essentially white labeling our resources. And so that was the birth of HL Pro Tools. And so we just started licensing everything we had, everything we were doing, and that included the team. It's like, we already had. It was like, oh, white label library. You're like, we already have one, and we were already keeping it up to date. So it was like, okay, we're just doing the same stuff that we were doing. So that was the birth of HL.
It's interesting because it's looking at HL Pro Tools from the outside. I don't think it's a SaaS, but really that's the heart of the business.
HL Pro Tools is not a SaaS,
but it's
it's a software empowered service,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I'll be honest now. So like, people are like, why do I keep it? And so it's now the more interesting thing is, it's a cost center is really what it is.
Hmm.
HL Pro Tools is not like, if you're like, do I like SaaS or do I like service? I'm like, I love SaaS. I love SaaS. And it actually serves us and even the other businesses that we have because it's the cost center for all of the service. But yeah, if you like a best case scenario service provider, 20%.
Yeah.
And you're like, and that's like almost the inverse on a worst case scenario SaaS provider.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
funny?
In
It's
margin, you mean?
in margin. I mean,
Yeah.
in profit margin. So I mean, like
Yeah.
best case scenario service provider, you're like 20%. You know, and that's
At scale. Yeah.
and yeah, definitely at scale.
So what do you mean by cost center?
So I after like the affiliate stuff and a whole process. So anybody can pick their own path. But so in 2016, that same time, I was like, I got to be better at marketing. I went and did an MBA at UCLA, and so they had like an executive MBA program. I don't recommend it, but it was intriguing.
This is 2020.
This is 2016.
Oh, 16. Sorry.
2016. That was that first shift where I was like, oh man, we were just a nice to have, not a need to have. I was like, I need to learn marketing. And I had 2 clients recommend Anderson, UCLA, they have an MBA program, but it's very much so like a traditional MBA. So you get like, it's a master's in business and there's some marketing components and business components. And there were certain classes that I loved and certain professors that I thought were phenomenal. Mostly the ones that were like part-time professors, full-time, like they would run like VC firms or they were, they write books on persuasion. Like those professors were phenomenal. Yeah. But in that space, I got exposed to this kind of like, it felt a little bit more like big boy marketing, or not big boy marketing, big boy business. Yeah. Buying and selling businesses from that perspective. Yeah. And so it just clued me into like, okay, there's 2 ways that a business finishes. It's sold or it dies. Yeah. That's it. Sold or it dies. And so as you're doing it, I was like, oh my gosh, I get, if I'm going to work for some goal, I want to build to sell. Like that's it. I want to build to sell. And there's been certain things that have picked up and like I've had success with them, but it's like an after effect. It's not the intentional. So very intentionally, I've been building things designed to sell. And so when you think about it in that way, let's imagine a service-based business. When I go to sell it as a sellable asset, let's think of this as $20,000 of profit. $20,000 of profit for a service-based business at best is worth 5 times that. Yeah. At best. Nowadays, more like 3 to 4. Yeah. So $20,000 is worth $100,000 in a service-based business if you accomplish that. In a software-based business, $20,000 best case scenario. I mean, there were some crazy numbers happening in like 2021, but let's say still average out best case scenarios is worth $200,000. Is that 10x? Yeah. $200,000. No. $2 million. 20
times 10 would be 200.
But it'd be in the tens of thousands, so it's 2 million.
Oh no. Yeah, because it'd be double the 100,000.
Yeah. Watch us do math live here. Okay. so think about that. If it's 200. I did bad math before. So 20 times 5. Wait, that's not right. Oh, it's just double. I was thinking it's greater. It's just double. So 5 or 10x multiple. That's double the value there. So in those terms, the same dollars of profit could be worth $100,000 or could be worth $20,000, just depending on where I put it. And so if you got a support team, critical function of anything, and if I have a software company, I've got a support team, their costs could be thrown over into a service-based business that has a contract with the software business, and then all of a sudden, wherever I could profit it, I could profit that over in the service, or I could profit. The same is true for the cost. Like, how much is that cost costing you? So if $20,000 of profit is worth $100,000 or worth $200,000, that means it's costing you $100,000 in the service or $200,000 in the software.
Yeah.
So as we were building these things, I realized, oh, we could just throw all of our low, it's going to be lower profit margin anyways. It's not as exciting anyways. No one really cares about it or likes it anyways, except for in slim strategic scenarios to preserve the value over here. So we just had the first deal ever, or not first deal ever, our first deal ever. You're talking some insights. We bought a high-level SaaS company. We didn't start it, we just bought it. And in 18 months, we got approached by a roll-up, and it was a value add. Like truly, bottom line was made better and totally acceptable when a huge cost center is accounted for by a few $100s a month to HL Pro Tools. So like what would have actually taken to support what the work going over there? It probably would have been at least, oh my gosh, at least it'd be 10 to 20 times that cost.
Wow.
From what's sent over to HL Pro Tools if it were kept over on in its own team, and people have done it, know it. It's just I mean, it's not hard to imagine how you could take that if you got a dedicated team. And you realize too is like, do you get 100% utilization out of your team? Like, no, never. Yeah. And so this was like a very recent example where I'm like, oh my gosh, this played so well for us because we basically just arbitraged whatever that, think that term 100% from a shift where it could have cost us double what it actually cost. I mean, there's a compounding factor there because actually we took, in the short run, we already took a fraction of it and then sent it over to another center. But that's why actually that's a good example where we lose money on that relation. We have relationships we lose money on. And it's like the integrity of that is because I'm also doing that. Like,
yeah, I see. So your HL Pro Tools for you is where you can plug in the SaaS businesses that you buy, run them up, sell them off, and not have to deal with the complexities of plugging in a different support team for every single time. And all the people that are HL Pro Tools subscribers help you with that.
Yeah, it's a fixed cost.
Yeah.
Well, so there's so many of these things have large fixed costs. If you think about it, like if I hire a employee, or I'd say this, if you wanted 24/7 coverage, like it's just you by yourself, there's no one else exists, you're like, I want 24/7 coverage. Minimum that's going to cost you is, I think it paces out. Let's say if you try to hire someone for $5 an hour, it's going to cost you around $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
24/7 costs $5,000 a month at $5 an hour. So basically take, and that's like, that's assuming no one takes a vacation or takes any sick time, right? Because as soon as a vacation or sick time happens, you just have a gap. You just don't have coverage there, but maybe they'd be fine to work over time. Yeah. There's no other cost there. You're like, so minimum just to offer that is $5,000. And now you're like, well, if I get bigger and I want redundancy, well, that's $10,000. Yeah. Minimum. That's like, okay, people can take a sick day and take time off. Now it's $10,000. And now you're like, well, what if I don't want to pay people $5 an hour? I want to pay them $10 an hour. You're like, okay, awesome. It's now $20,000 minimum. People, it's not obvious, but business gets more inefficient with volume.
Yeah.
Because of redundancy. Because every person, well, the more people that are involved, people are fragile. And so the larger you get, the more redundancy you need. And it's an unintuitive aspect of business, but that's why people always look at it like and assume it scales linearly, but it's actually the inverse of efficiency when it comes to people. Now you can get that efficiency back with technology, but on the people side, it's almost the inverse relationship to technology when it comes to economies of scale.
It's so true. So is that your plan moving forward? Just keep buying SaaS businesses, plug them into HL Pro Tools. Like you have such a massive information benefit and tech benefit and everything. So you can grow these companies faster and then sell them off and use HL Pro Tools as the cost center.
It's been, so that's been kind of in process. In terms of like, I wouldn't have assumed we would have a deal this year. I would have thought next year at the soonest, just because of interest rates. It was more of a strategic opportunity. Like we didn't seek it out.
Yeah.
But not unhappy with it, So count a W wherever you can. Yeah, I think in terms of looking forward, I still love the value driver of software.
Mm.
And even that, so like I live in this tension of, we see at high volume big teams and we do our best. And I spend so much energy and effort on making that a better process. But I'll tell you, like, the secret is it's always technology. It's always like technology is what stabilizes humanity, because humanity is super fragile and inconsistent and just it's challenging in its own way. But for me personally, I think I just have this bigger vision of like a commitment to growth. So like I said, now it's like the big win for my wife and I is we want to raise kind and confident human beings who want to spend time with us when they no longer have to.
Mm-hmm.
Part of doing that is I want to show them what hard work looks like.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm doing it. Because right now I've been blessed in so many areas, like multiple times over, that you're like, I truly do not have to. I don't have to work. I really, truly don't have to work. It feels weird and like, I don't know, flashy to say that, but you're like, no, I multiple times over do not have to work. Here's my formula. I delivered a ton of value to the marketplace, took all my digital cash flowing things and translated those into residential real estate. And so now it's like we own enough properties outright in cash that like rental income could cash flow our life. And so even if all the digital stuff crumbles to nothing, you're like, I'm still fine.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, why do I do it? I think for my kids, I like showing them hard work. For me, I like growing. I constantly get challenged, which is really good. This is the interesting thing about the space that we're in when you serve peers is I realize this more so of just humanity. It's no fault, but when you mentioned like in the gaps in the unknown, I actually think it's an amazing, you're saying at the start, like, what if we did a story where you would tell it all based on not knowing? And I was like, that's more reflective of you, if it's positive or if it's negative. But I've seen, but the default in the gap, we usually default to negative. We, it's helped me with humility and trying to teach that character to my sons of try to assume the positive. And I feel the weight of that is a lot of times my deficiencies, I tell it to the team, my deficiencies create opportunities. But I've learned that gap, that deficiency, that silence is usually assumed to be negative.
And so figuring out your next journey, if you will, is figuring out how to bring that positivity to yourself, your children, your team.
And for more folks, this is where I'm trying to figure out, you're like, what's the next phase of it?
Yeah.
I think trying to eliminate the gap, it's not perfectly possible, but I think with technology, it's possible. But to replace that with a lot of value, that is a lot of value that I can control.
Okay.
Right. So like, here's the interesting thing, and probably in small ways this is found, and I know we've been chatting here for a while.
I've got time if you do.
I think I've got time. I can always make time. Or I can reallocate and reprioritize time. When something goes like today, I'll tell you in GoHighLevel, you can no longer use a root domain as your custom white label domain. It's not a big deal. It affects. So most folks go app.mydomain.com.
Yeah.
If you wanted to just make your GoHighLevel login mydomain.com, GoHighLevel would reject it right now. Not for a second do I think, my goodness, Sean Clark, why don't you prioritize this? Why are you ruining my business?
Yeah.
But some people do. Like
Yeah.
they literally, that experience is like, they're like, Sean Clark. Now, at some capacity, I think there's just like an overwhelming momentum or majority or stuff where you can buy. I don't say buy, but like you stockpile grace.
Yeah.
And I've seen seasons of that, but like the grace, you can wear that out, and so it's very difficult as a creator. Well, as a founder, a creator of something that either grows based on systems or on teams. So when you're doing information, it's good, but you'll probably still experience little bits of it. Someone's going to find a video of yours from like 5 years ago and be like, "This is so out of date. Why don't you update your videos?" And you're like, "I have like 5 different updates. You're judging this
Yeah.
one that is out of date. Like you're right. You found
Yeah.
it." But that's I don't know. For me, this is like the personal challenge and looking forward is how do I continue to deliver value? And it's probably never going to be like you're probably never going to eliminate the space for haters. So then I guess it's just like an emotional maturity to continue to like love and serve people through their own, their own dialogue in that gap, in that silence, whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. But you're playing with house money. So I feel like this shift happened fairly recently for me to like, I was always trying to get there to the abundance thing where it's like the bad client, the day you talked about when the client cancels doesn't bother you because you've got so much recurring, you've got so much headspace, and that a lot of these people don't have the grace because there's no margin in their lives. There's no financial margin, there's no time margin, there's nothing else. And so they have to get mad, or it feels like they have to get mad because they're stealing the little that they do have. And some of it's just tech competence, like once you've worked with these tools for 5 years, you're just like, okay, hit refresh, turn the computer off and on, and like, it'll probably fix itself, fix 90% of problems. But yeah, I feel like the way that you're approaching things now is so, if for to anyone listening, when you can get to that point of abundance, everything switches because you're going out to serve the marketplace from a place of want instead of from a place of need. And it's everything. It literally is everything. And it'll take some years to get there, but once you get there, it's so worth it.
It's a privileged position for sure.
100%.
And that's honestly, that's like, it's one of the things that like lights me up. I really love getting to help people with is like that margin. Here's the like the crazy thing about it is part of it is partially it's a decision. And like you mentioned, you found that freedom there. It doesn't mean that clients don't leave. I think some folks think that like or you don't fully understand the cost of that freedom is imperfect action. Like that's just what it is. And like we've talked about this previously of like do we like, model of charge, like allow folks to buy something they may not use, right?
Yeah.
Or allow folks, I say this, like not judging people for why they buy. Because I'm the kind of buyer who buys and might get a little, like it just, I need a little bit of value and I'm happy with the purchase. It's not everybody who buys that way, but so, but I've been that way for a long time, even in the business where I was like, if I could just break through this one little thing, it was worth it. As you shift to something that's a little bit more of like, only pay for what you want to use or what you need to use there. It's totally fine. Like every business can do whatever they want to do there. It just it can limit your ability to grow. And this is the interesting thing is as you do more and more business, you realize your traction, like momentum creates momentum. And so people will catch you in like one moment. Things are never perfect, but you're like, okay, you fix all these things, it creates the other problems, and you fix those problems, it creates a new problem. Like there's always an imperfection. And especially if you're in like the tech space, like we're literally, high level runs into this. They'll like, we released a new feature. It broke this other feature. And if you came in and you just judged high level on that one day, where the new feature was released, this thing was broken, and people have had this experience. People don't realize, people come to high level and they have this experience and they're like, oh, this is garbage. I could never trust this. I couldn't rely on this. They leave and they peace out.
Yep.
And so then, but some of us is like, oh my gosh, you got to give a little bit more of a perspective there. And it's easy for us to say on the other side. It's hard for us to give ourselves that too, because I've felt it as people come in and they're like, oh man, they hit you at that moment where you fix this problem, but you hadn't fixed this problem. There's the problem. And you are immortalized in that state of being. But the cool thing is I've seen many times over, if you're committed to continuously just deliver value, continuous improvements, things cycle back. Things, they always cycle back, and high level's done that so many times over. I can't tell you how many folks I talk to now are like, oh, I tried high level 3 years ago, wasn't quite there, but here I am, I'm back.
Yeah.
And they just, were committed to those daily improvements.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I'll let you go, but if anyone doesn't know what HL Pro Tools is, it's a white label support for your high level SaaS, and it comes with a bunch of other tools and a community and calls and all kinds of things that will help you just take your SaaS business to the next level. I want you, Matt, to be able to plug anything you want to plug there or elsewhere. But where can people find you, and what are you currently offering?
Yeah. So here's what I'll plug, if we're going to plug anything. So I do everybody in HL Pro Tools gets it, but you can get it for free. So I do a newsletter once a week. I call it Margin Makers. And this is like one of the few things I still create. And I really do try to like synthesize as much as I see relevant and valuable in the marketplace. And so if you want to like, HL Pro Tools Lite, we don't have a free trial. I don't have anything like that. We have a huge, amazing team. We are hiring and growing and continuing to like place in the highest and best versions of folks. I'll be honest now, like here's the funny thing. Our growing center there is we hire other folks from other, I guess I got to say, competitors, and they just know how to do it. I'm like, great. The talent pool is there. At the end of the day, it was people anyways. So if you have a bad experience, you were probably judging a person, and that person might no longer work there, and somebody else who was great might have got recruited over. Like that's how businesses do great things. But if you want totally free, it costs nothing. And what I think is the stuff that is the needle movers for me and the folks I get to see running it now. Cause we have, we're in a cool position. We run all the support for folks like mastermind.com and Frank Kern and Peng Jun and Julie Chanel and most of the
how many sub accounts do you support? Do you know?
I should know this number. It's in the last time I checked, it was 40,000, but honestly, I haven't checked in a while. So it might be greater than that. So we run support for tens of thousands of businesses and on behalf of thousands of agencies. And that's where I can't say, this is a weird thing. It's a weird position to be in. I can't say I am the master at what we do. They've been pretty good at bringing folks around that are great at doing it. Mm-hmm. I say my deficiencies create opportunities. Yeah. It's actually a lot of things that I'm bad at that I've been able to find other people who are great at that. It's like, oh, good. That's how I get to exist. If they weren't good enough at it, like I would fall apart and none of this thing would even continue to exist there. But with that, if I were to say like, what is Matt really, really great at? It is, I've heard people, I call it like just creative marketing. Maybe it's not that crazy at all, but sort of creative problem solving. I guess that's what I really enjoy is creative problem solving. And in the lens of growth, I've really enjoyed delivering value, and business grows as a consequence of how much value you can deliver to the marketplace. And when you do things that others can't or won't do, or say that's foolish or crazy or impossible, that's where you get your breakout opportunity. And so I've really enjoyed getting to help people identify those kind of things and take whatever, whatever wisdom I've gathered over the last couple of years through doing it ourselves and observing thousands of others do it. So that is, we call it Margin Makers. It's a newsletter. I think it's just mm.hlprotos.com. But however, whatever links Keaton has for HL Protos, you should use those.
I'll
But
put the link for Margin Makers down below. And I can personally vouch that it is a piece into this man's mind, a view into some really cool stuff. It's not your average newsletter. So,
okay, well, appreciate that. I didn't even know you were a reader or subscriber. Maybe if you're in my ecosystem, I force you, so you have to unsubscribe from it. And so, but if you want to go intentionally, you can intentionally subscribe to it.
Cool, Matt. Thanks so much, man.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Any last final words of advice for somebody in the SaaS world right now in 60 seconds?
Focus on getting customers, even if those are free customers. Customers create customers, and try to build the muscle of imperfect action. Whenever you sense yourself saying it's not good enough, I can't go live, I can't make this happen, here, I don't know, hopefully this is a voice saying you can go do it. Like, on the other side of that scary imperfect action is where you want to be. And so I just want to encourage you in that.
Love it. Channel your inner Sean Clark on a walk, answering his cell phone.
Yeah.
And you will crush it. Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much.